All right, so today we are jumping into Dr. Jordan B. Peterson's We Who Wrestle With God. The big idea here is that the ancient stories in Genesis, well, they aren't just dusty old tales. The book argues they're actually something more like deep psychological blueprints for how our own consciousness works. And it all starts with this fundamental question that, really, gets to the heart of being human. Why are we so completely captivated by stories? I mean, think about it. From the games we played as kids to the movies we binge watch now, our lives are just saturated with them. We tell them, we act them out, we consume them. Why? What makes them so essential to who we are?
Okay, so what's the answer? Well, the book's take is pretty profound. It's not just that we enjoy stories. It's that stories are the very structure through which we perceive reality itself. They aren't just entertainment. No, they're more like maps of value. They show us what's worth aiming for, what we should avoid, and how we should act. The direction you aim literally organizes the world you see around you. And stories? They're the ultimate description of that structure.
To really see this idea in action, the book takes us right to one of the most powerful and, let's be honest, unsettling stories in Genesis: Cain and Abel. This is presented as a foundational lesson on right versus wrong action, and crucially, the price of proper sacrifice.
So here we go, the two hostile brothers. You know the basics, but the book zooms in on a critical detail, the nature of their sacrifices. Abel, the shepherd, he offers the firstborn of his flock, in other words, the very best he has. But Cain, the farmer, he just brings an offering of fruit. There's no mention of its quality, just some fruit. And that, right there, is the whole point. It's not that they sacrificed, it's how. Abel's was a genuine, high-quality sacrifice, and it was respected. Cain's half-hearted offering was not.
After his offering gets rejected, Cain is given this unbelievably stark warning. This is a massive fork in the road. The book frames this as a crystal-clear choice. Cain can either face the fact that he failed, change his approach and make a real sacrifice, or he can let bitterness and resentment take over. And notice, he's told explicitly that he has the power to rule over that dark impulse. The choice is his.
And well, Cain makes his choice. He goes down the path of resentment. The book defines this as something far more sinister than just being upset. It's an active, voluntary, even a creative partnership with the worst parts of yourself. It's that spirit that whispers all the justifications for why you've been wronged, that broods over slights, and ultimately, it's what paves the way for the world's very first murder. So Cain's resentment is one path into chaos, but the book explores another, just as dangerous: pride. This next section looks at that constant human struggle to create order and the arrogance that always threatens to bring it all crashing down.
Now, the book interprets the creation story not as a literal scientific account, but as a symbolic map for how to act. It's the archetype for how all of us turn the chaos of raw potential into something good and habitable. It starts with consciousness acting on the void, making distinctions, separating light from dark, land from sea, giving things definition, and then finally creating beings who are meant to continue that very process of bringing order to the world.
But what happens when that amazing creative ability turns into arrogance? For that, the book points to the Tower of Babel as the perfect cautionary tale. This is the archetype of intellectual pride, what it calls the Luciferian spirit. The builders you see, they aren't trying to build something to honor a higher good. They're out to make a name for themselves, trying to use their own technical skill to become gods themselves.
And the story just brilliantly shows the consequences. When humanity decides its own intellect is the highest possible authority, that it can define good and evil all by itself, the result isn't a stairway to heaven, it's a total collapse. The shared understanding that makes a society even possible just disintegrates. That multiplication of languages is this powerful metaphor for a world where everyone has their own truth, no one is united by a common goal, and everything just fractures into chaos.
Okay, so if these stories really are psychological blueprints, what's the final takeaway? What is the pattern for living that they're trying to show us? How are we supposed to actually act in the world?
The book really boils it down to these core principles. It's a pattern for a meaningful life. First, you aim high as you can conceive. Be like Abel. You voluntarily confront the scary, chaotic things in your life. You have to sacrifice what feels good right now for what's truly meaningful in the long run. And you have to be constantly on guard against that poison of resentment that destroyed Cain and that arrogant pride that brought down Babel. And underlying it all, speak truthfully. That's the bedrock that keeps order from collapsing.
So here's the bottom line. According to this interpretation, these ancient stories aren't just descriptive, they are prescriptive. They are laying out a fundamental, existential choice that's in front of every single one of us. There's one path, and it leads toward meaning and responsibility and a good, solid order. And then there's the other path, and that one leads to a self-made hell of bitterness and lies and, inevitably, a total collapse back into chaos.
And that leaves us right where we started, with the central question the book poses. It's a question for every one of us to, well, wrestle with. If our lives are stories, and if those stories truly shape our reality, then we have the awesome responsibility of figuring out which story we're actually living. So, take a look at your life. What is its true story? And maybe the more important question is, what should it be?